Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. I've been tied up with doing, well, attempting to do as much paperwork as possible today, which I've cracked on with. Man came and mended the boiler this morning, so we had hot radiators for the first time in a considerable time, which meant I could do some washing because I've now got some radiators to dry it on. You can't put washing out to dry on the line like I would do through the summer because we just keep getting heavy showers. I can't be bothered to keep dashing in and out. So I've got radiators now, so stuff can dry off indoors, and that'll be for the rest of the winter. Mundane stuff, and I thought I could do with doing a video, and I watched Ynse do a video on something I haven't filmed or we don't look at often. The forgotten ones, I think it was, and I think his idea was to sort of start a theme, so that people like me who can't think of anything to film have got at least one idea to put together. So I thought, right, we'll do that then. We'll do the forgotten ones. So I thought rather than come out here and try and think, I thought, well, I'll just go through my notes through each individual plant, and there aren't any. I inadvertently cycle round my plants often enough that there isn't anything that is just forgotten. But I did think of a couple that came from Jeff Hand's, so they were Jeff's plants, and they're ones that I don't know. They're unbloomed so far, but they're growing. And at this point, holding the camera, pointing at the grow room, I don't know what they're called. And if they haven't got a tag, I'll have to do a pop-up because I can't remember. But I know which two plants it actually is. So we'll go and get them down. Oh, this is a thought as well. Ynse's quite sure he knows what this is going to be. Now, this is an Odont type that I got at Burnham's. And it has a white base flower with lots of sort of tigery orange mottled markings on. And I bought two. And those are they. Neither of them have got a tag because they have no name. And they both had incredibly similar blooms. They were different. Now, I don't know which one's which, but this will identify which one's which. And I will get an identifying tag on them. Not a name, just a description of the bloom so that I at least know which one's which. Now, this one's got a spike, so it will bloom in the not too distant future. This one hasn't, but it does have a new growth coming up sort of in the middle of the plant. I mean, they're both relatively healthy looking plants, but only one's got they were both in bloom obviously when I got them. So there's those two. Those don't get filmed because I don't know what they are. They would come into the other category of new blooms opening in the near future, or like when I did a spike hunt, we found this one. But it will open eventually, and then we'll at least know which one of the two is which. But I've done pop-ups of the two blooms, and you can see they are incredibly similar, but I don't know which one's which. So that gets them out of the way, which I needed to do. And then this is plant number one, and this has got a tag. Oops, you can go on the floor. Well, Mojo's on the hunt out there. He'll get wet if he stays out there too long. Now, this has got a strange name if it's the one I think it is, which it is. Anacheilium pachyspiculum. Pachyspiculum. Oh, words to that effect. And that, I do believe, is a name that it can have another name, if you see what I mean. I think Anacheilium is... it does have another more common name, I believe, but I think that's its appropriate name now. Now, this plant is... it gets jammed in its black pot, so it is going to come out. It's got a good root system now, so it's picked up okay since I got it from Jeff's. Very good root system, still growing, so that's good. It did push up a spike and slug at it. So we didn't get to see the blooms. So I said then, well, we're going to have to wait for a new growth then, aren't we? Well, we've got a nice strong new growth coming up here. And on the size of, this is a single plant, if I remember rightly. With a plant this size, there's no good reason why that's not going to bloom on that growth. I don't think, it looks like there might be another one here as well. It looks like a new growth. Now I've had a bit of rot on this plant. Also got some flipping scale. So what they go for the weak bit. Look, that's an old leaf, an old bulb. So straight away they go for that. But I'm getting to the point now where I almost need hippie soap. Look, they're in there as well. Now I'll show this. This is when they get down in leaf joints. Now I have a new method. And it's a toothpick, which is got a point on it, so it can get right down in there, because they form, what would you call it, like a mat, a clump, and sprays and things don't penetrate. They've got like a waxy coat. There's hundreds of them in there. You know, it's a colony. But by using a toothpick, it breaks them up. And often they will come out as a lump on the end of the toothpick, sort of like that, and then they can just be squashed. But yeah, I'm going to have to get a spray on this one. But yeah, they've gone for the older part of the plant as usual. It's quite often nowadays, if it's an old part of the plant, I'll just take the leaves off. They've got nowhere to be. Anyway, this is one of the plants. There's a nice new growth coming up here. Yeah, so we've got new growth, so we will see the blooms on this at some point. It's got a very, very strange growth habit, because it grows a pseudo bulb, then it grows another small one on top. Can you see that? Very unusual growth pattern. I don't remember seeing that anywhere before. Again here. But that's how it grows. Yeah? Providing the scale leave it alone long enough. So anyway, that's plant number one. Came from Jeff's, and I don't show that because there's nothing really to say about it apart from it's done quite a good root system and it's got some new growths. So we will hopefully get some blooms this time round. And then if the zygo can get out of the way. Oh, just to mention this zygo, this is the one that was the latest growth was pushing away from the media. And Michael McCarthy said, you're better off lifting that out of the pot and lowering it down. So I did. So the new growth, hopefully when it produces its roots, will get straight down into the media now, instead of having a large gap. And then this is the other one that came from Jeff's, that again hasn't bloomed yet. It's a reasonably healthy plant. And this is Ynse lancifolia. Again, a non-bloomer for me so far, and it's obviously not going to bloom on the old part of the plant because it already has. If you look at the old part of the plant, every single one of these bulbs has bloomed, all four of these large old bulbs. So this was a division, yeah. This is the only one that possibly didn't, but the front of the plant has got two nice strong new growths, and we do have roots. So again, I would say that this is going to bloom on one or both of these new growths. So they're both oncidium type things, or oncidium looking things, but yeah, I treat those as a pair, even though they've got totally different names, simply because they both came from Jeff's. They've never bloomed, but they've got new growths which hopefully will bloom. So yeah. And the other thing I was thinking, because obviously repotting, the kitchen time videos are relatively popular depending on the plant and how long the video is, I've noticed. The longer ones don't do so well. Well, they do, but they only get half watched, which is not quite the goal, is it? You know, if you make a video, it'd be nice if people watched it all. But, you know, some people won't do the really long videos, and some people got other things to do, which is fair enough. So I dropped my tray, stick that back up there. But I also went through my notes, look at a date last potted, and I always mark a plant that is due for a repot that's an emergency gets a red colour. If it's just due a repot as a routine and needs to wait for an appropriate time, like when there's some new roots growing, for instance, then they get orange instead of red. In other words, keep your eye on it and repot as soon as possible, but it's not desperate. And quite honestly, there's only 2 desperate ones at the moment, and one of them is this one. And why is that desperate? Because of what it's in. It's unknown. That's what it, that's what it was in when I got it, and it's that peat-based stuff, and it remains very wet. And of course, this time of year, it's not drying out because I haven't got the heat, so I'm having to. That had water some time ago, and it's not drying. So the roots are in danger because of my lower temperatures. So that needs doing as soon as possible. But I mean, I could do it now while it's in bloom. The blooms are starting to go now, so it's not going to be in bloom much longer. But this came with a spike that was open and a spike that had quite a few buds on it. So one of them, I think the one with the buds was this one. Now they're all open now, but obviously the spike that opened last is going to last quite a bit longer than the other one. And the fact that this is the one with the blooms that are going, I suspect this spike's going to last a while yet. I don't normally worry too much about a plant in bloom if I need to repot it, but there's no new growths on there. It's difficult to tell because this really does look like a new growth. If you look at the coloration of it, that does look like a new growth, and it's not shriveled or anything. It looks like a new growth, but it's not growing. It's finished growing. There's no leaf growth. It's finished. So it was a short cane. And although it's relatively new, if it's going to produce roots, it already has. So missed the opportunity. That opportunity was missed before I got it. So there's very, very little to take out in the kitchen now, and quite a lot of it will just wait till the new growing season now. I've got a couple of Cattleyas that are they were put in the larger holy clay pots because they were supposedly vigorous. And they haven't necessarily performed. So the pot's really too big. Now, if it was in the new chunky bark, that wouldn't matter, but it's not. 2 of them are in the old Orchiata bark, and that bark's already staying wet far too long, where it was old in the bag before I used it, and now when I'm using it, it's old, if you see what I mean, so it hasn't lasted. And if I leave Cattleyas in that type of bark too long, again with lower temperatures, plus the short days which stops them growing vigorously, and they stay wet too long, I'll lose root systems. So there might be some Cattleyas to do, and I've got a feeling there's a couple of Cattleyas that are going to get thrown out as well. You can see the sort of thing I mean. It's not really worth keeping. I mean, even if it puts up a new growth, if it only does 1 growth a year, it's 3 years away from being a decent plant and getting back anywhere near blooming size, and I can't be bothered, quite honestly. So, there might be some Cattleyas to dump, because that shelf is getting a bit crowded. Well, basically, I tried to get all my Cattleyas in a place where they're going to get the brightest light through the winter, which, I know it sounds daft, but this is the brightest light in the summer because most of the light comes in through the roof, so it's the highest shelf. But not in the winter because the sun mainly comes in through the side. And this shelf's shaded by that huge tree out there for a lot of the day. But the brightest light comes in through this side in the winter. Well, it will do when I get the shade netting off. It's still got 2 layers on. But it's earmarked to be dealt with this weekend. It doesn't have to wait for the weekend, especially as I've got a thing to do on Saturday. So another layer will come off that side. In fact, I may do it all in one go. We're nearly into November now. Very short days. So shade netting will be adjusted shortly. And I'll leave it at that. A relatively short one for me. And really, we're just awaiting, some of these spikes to actually open. I think that this zygo will be the first one. This is showing good colour on the buds now, so this will be the first spike to open, I suspect, which is the one with the bluey colour on it, the unusual. The one that I got knowing I didn't like the blooms that much. Daft thing to do, wasn't it? I just wanted another zygo to prove that the one zygo that I managed to repot and get to rebloom wasn't a fluke. So I wanted another one, and I deliberately chose this one at Burnham's because it wasn't very good. It wasn't a good plant. I thought, well, if I can get a not very good plant to get going and bloom again, that would be great. And I mean, it has got a nice new growth with 2 spikes, so we're sort of doing okay. No, it was potted. Well, it was potted in such a way that its new growth had room to move across the pot, but the majority of the old plant's hanging out. Anyway, that'll be the first of the spikes to open, I suspect. And Bobcat up the back here. When this does open, this is going to be a pretty good show, as long as the blooms last long enough for all of the buds to be open. Because I mean, if you look at this first branch, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 buds on here, and then another 3 or 4 here, another 2 or 3 here, another 3 or 4 there, and then the lower branches, and then the tall spike going right up nearly to the roof. That's going to have a lot of blooms on it, and they are a very, very bright colour. And then we got spikes down here. This one's pushing on, which we have looked at before, and I said there's 2 other growths over there. There's no reason why they shouldn't bloom, and they've both got spikes just starting, but they're tucked right down in the leaves. So that will have 3 spikes on the go. So we've got stuff to come, and blooms going over. You know, this one's going over. This one will be soon. The Kaniko's dropped its last buds. My Victoria Regina is starting to go. That's the first bloom starting to go. So I've got lots of things going over, lots of things that we won't have soon. The Tolumnia, the bloody bird, that's starting to go. It's getting all crinkly round the lower sections. The orange Vanda's gone. The blue one's still looking good, but the orange one's gone now. Oh, and I did notice we had the Mr. Sidii Arangus, that was in bloom not so long ago. We've got this little beauty. This is the Luteo alba variety Rhodosticta. Smashing little spike there. And what was I saying the other day? I thought I saw another spike coming, obviously not. But at least it bloomed, and now I've got 3 Arangus, and this is a very young plant, this one, and I said I'd probably have to wait until the next growing season to get this one to bloom. And blow me to prove me a liar, that looks incredibly like a spike starting, because this has a very fine root system, so that looks a bit too big to be a root, and the roots don't tend to come out above the leaves on this plant, so I think that's a spike. So that'll be the 3rd of the Arangus to have a bloom this year, and 2 of those were not expected. That includes this one. Yes, that's good. All 3 Arangus will have bloomed by the end of the year, which is good stuff. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's starting to get dark now. It gets dark not only early, but very, very quickly. And of course, in the not too distant future, our stupid clocks are going to change, aren't they? So they go back an hour, which effectively means we get brighter mornings, but it gets dark much earlier in the evening. So a lot of people use what they call useful daylight. The daylight they gain at the beginning of the day is of no use to them because they're in bed, bobos. I'm not, I'm up, so it's useful to me. But yeah, we've got that silly nonsense with the clocks going back. Oh, people always say, oh, I can never reach which way it is. Well, spring forward, fall back. Why is that difficult? Luckily, because I'm in contact with a lot of American sort of thing, I am happy with the expression fall, whereas in the UK people say autumn. You know, we have spring, summer, autumn and winter, whereas in the States it's spring, summer, fall and winter. But I'm comfortable with the expression fall, so the clock's falling back in autumn suits me fine, and it means I don't have to write it down like some people do. Anyway, most people nowadays, if you think about it, most of your clocks, most of your items that tell the time, not necessarily clocks, adjust automatically if you have to put up with this daft British summertime stuff. I mean, most of mine do. I've got a manual clock on the mantelpiece, which I will have to change. The clock on the timer of the boiler is digital, but not automatic. My little weather station clock that I use to tell the time in the kitchen, and I use it to time certain things when I'm cooking, that's automatic. My phone's automatic, the computer's automatic, so I don't have much to change really. And my watch will be manual, but I won't bother changing that till next time when I put it on, because I don't wear my watch. I wear my watch as like jewellery. So if I'm dressing up a bit to go out somewhere, I might put my watch on, but I don't wear it day to day. Anyway, enough waffle, and I'll see you next time. But yeah, the ideas for something to film might be useful now. It's getting very thin on the ground. Unless I get new blooms, there's virtually nothing going on in the kitchen. I'm not buying new plants. That would be a silly idea. So, you know, it gets to the point where you think, well, am I filming for the sake of it? And none of us should really be doing that. You film because there's something useful to say. But I can always pick on a genus and have a go at a sort of generalised care guide or something like that. I can always fall back on those. I'm often reluctant to do those though. It's so environmental dependent. That's the problem. So this is how I look after my zygos. Okay, it might work for me here in this media, but somebody else tries their zygos in that media and it might not work because their environment's different. Temperature range is different, light levels, you know, it's just so many variables. But so you can only do generalisations anyway. Right, I think we can end looking at that. I think I've got an Orchid Society meeting Friday evening, Bournemouth Orchid Society, and I think that's going to take a trip. I think we'll take that out to the tables. Because with the competition tables, it's a yearly competition basically. So each meeting there is a first, second and third in the two classes, but there are effectively there is the most number of points for the year in both classes that actually you get a money prize at the end of the year. And I've worked out that all you've got to do to win that money is put a reasonable plant in at every meeting. It doesn't have to come first, it just has to be there and get some points. And then the cumulative points, because you put something in every time, normally does the trick. So there's money on it this time, so I think we'll have a go. Okay, see you next time. Bye for now.